Hello and welcome to Oregon State University's Farm to Fork webinar series. My name is Sherry Cole. I'll be the moderator for today's webinar, and we appreciate that you took the time to join us. Our intention with this series is really to bring you stories about how our food systems work and how they're really changing to become more sustainable and resilient, and in particular, the people that are behind that change. Our food system is really diverse, and our intention is to have the stories that we share with you reflect that diversity. Just a few logistics before I introduce today's speaker. First, we're recording the webinar. It will be, we want to make this available to those who couldn't join us today or for your use later. And you'll find that on the Farm to Fork website. We also want this to be as much of a conversation as it can be. And so we really welcome your questions. So you'll see the Q&A feature at the bottom of your screen. Click that, and throughout the presentation, go ahead and post your questions. You'll also see that you have the ability to upvote a question. So if you see one in the list that you like, upvote that, and then it'll rise to the top, and we'll take that. So with that, it's my pleasure today to introduce Rao Mandava, who'll be talking to us about what sustainable looks like at Nestle. Welcome, Rao.
Thank you very much, Sherry, and thanks everyone for joining this call. I know probably it's a weekend time and you're busy with other things. So just a little bit intro about myself before I go into the presentation. So I manage R&D sustainability program at Nestle Development Center in Solon, which is located in the suburbs of Cleveland. So we do all the innovation and the renovation work for Nestle brands that are frozen and the chilled prepared food, what we call. I'll share a little bit the brands and the products we work on. Almost 33 years with the Nestle R&D and worked in Switzerland, Sweden, and the US, of course, managed projects for many different countries. Most of the time in project management, and then later on as a group manager in innovation and innovation strategy, and also sometime in the area of digital and connected kitchen. About 2 years ago, I took this present role in sustainability. So my main function is initiating and coordinating all the R&D Carbon NetZero activities for Nestle frozen and refrigerated food. My academic background is in food science, having studied in India and the UK. So before going into the actual sustainability program, I thought I would have a little technical challenge in advancing the slides. Let's see how it.
Just click on the slide.
Okay. So before going to the sustainability, I thought of sharing a little bit of high-level overview about Nestle and also Nestle R&D in particular. I think many of you know, I mean, it's Nestle, the biggest food company and a well-known brand portfolio. But most people don't know that we are also, I mean, in terms of market capitalization, we are quite high up in the ranks, 22nd with a capitalization of almost $315 billion. So it's much bigger company than, like other companies you are familiar with, like medical companies, like pharmaceutical companies like Pfizer or Merck or other companies like Samsung. So, and also when it comes to global presence, you can see, like we are present in almost 190 countries. And we have about 350 factories in 77 countries. And we pride ourselves in the diversity of our employees. So you can see like 85% of the management committee positions held by the local employees. And also more importantly, 44% of the middle and senior managers are female. So these are some of our known brands. I'm sure many of you recognize few brands here, but we get surprised and people keep asking, oh, Perrier and San Pellegrino, do they belong to Nestle? Even Purina, sometimes even Stouffer's. These are the brands we have in portfolio, and 30 of our brands are, they generate more than 1 billion annual sales. So this is a Nestle R&D and our innovation model. First of all, we invest significantly in R&D, close to 1.6 billion annually, and we have about 4,000 employees in the R&D system. So this is our primary innovation model. I think we had this for the last as many as 15, 16 years I know of. So we always start, of course, with the consumers, what benefits we are giving to the consumer. And we also look into what kind of technologies we have to find the solutions for the consumer needs. And of course, the third leg is, do we have the commercial capabilities to execute this? And more importantly, creating shared value and sustainability. I just wanted to emphasize, this Paris Climate Agreement, which I'm going to share a little bit, it came about in 2015. But even before that, we always gave importance to the sustainability angle of the innovation. So this is, as you can see here on this chart, Nestle R&D is very global. We have, R&D centers all over, covering all the geographical regions. So, of course, the concentration is mainly in Europe here, and of course, a lot in the US. And then, of course, Asia. China is a very growing market, so that's why we're present there as well. So how we are organized, what we call in R&D, we call them like R&D centers as Nestle Product Technology Centers or NPTC or Nestle Development Centers. These are structured around our product categories. So we have 7 main product categories. You can see nutrition, beverages, water, dairy, confectionery, food, and pet care. For each of these categories, there is an NPTC and also an NDC. The difference between NPTC and NDC is NPTC is more global in nature, and also they have more competencies in different R&D functions. Whereas the NDC or Nestle Development Center, either it's a regional based or sometimes a country specific. So of course the competencies are a little bit less, but that's how we are structured. And when also in some countries, we have what we call R&D centers, but they are very country specific and they do work in many of the product categories. So they're not like product specific. So the category I work is called food, or sometimes we call it prepared food also. So the main center, the NPTC, is located in Singen, southern part of Germany. And then we have 2 Nestle development centers. So one in India near Delhi, and the one where I work in Solon, suburbs of Cleveland. So this is how, like different categories in the food itself. So we classify them as ambient, frozen, and chilled. So all the ambient categories are taken care by these 2 centers in Germany and in India. So, different product categories or formats, you have the cooking aids or sauces, what we call recipe solutions, for example, like bolognese fix. So consumers have to buy meat and the pasta, and they can make a complete dish out of our recipe solution. Of course, dehydrated soups, and big business in India and other parts of the Asia, noodles, 2-minute noodles under the Maggi name, so brand. And then, of course, some cold sauces like mayonnaise and those kind of things. In frozen and chilled, 4 main categories. So pizza and snacks, meals, dough-based products, and then vegetarian category. So some of the brands, probably you're aware of this frozen and chilled. So first, Lean Cuisine, DiGiorno, and then the Wagner brand, pizza brand is in Europe. So Hot Pockets also, in the area of snacks. So whereas in the dough, we use the Buitoni brand mainly in Europe, and vegetarian, we have 2 or 3 brands. Garden Gourmet is in Europe, Sweet Earth in the US, and Tival in Israel and some Middle Eastern markets. So as you all know, food innovation is very complex. So this is how we approach in Nestle. Of course, primarily, we have to make sure that the taste is there. Without that, we never launch any product. And then we give importance to nutrition and health. It can be, it always starts with the clean ingredients, what we call kitchen cupboard ingredients, less processing as well. And then, of course, the optimal nutritional values, low fat and high protein, high fiber, and of course, the micronutrients as well. And in some cases, in some countries like Asia and Africa, we fortify some of our food products with macro and micronutrients as well. Affordability, of course, we play in different consumer segments and in many geographical locations. So it's very critical, everybody should be able to afford our products. So, and then finally, the sustainability, where my main presentation is going to focus on. By the way, sustainability, when we mean sustainability, it's more than just climate change and carbon footprint reduction. So it's much more broader. We always start with individuals or families we call individual consumers. Of course, our primary objective is, to offer the tastier and the more nutritional choices to inspire so that people lead healthier lives. And then in communities, we play quite significant role in many rural communities we operate. So almost all our factories are in small towns or rural areas. So there, the employment and the further support necessary for farming community is very essential. So we take care of that. And of course, we respect and promote human rights and all the other practices. Then finally, of course, the planet side. So, taking care of the water and taking care of the climate change. And of course, finally, safeguarding the environment. So very holistic view of sustainability. And then coming to the climate change and carbon reduction. So this is what we pledge. So you're all aware of the 2015 UN Paris Agreement. So basically, we cannot increase the temperature more than 1.5 degrees centigrade. So for that reason, every organization, every country has to look into how we reduce our carbon footprint. So Nestle also signed that agreement with many other big companies. So our main goals for that agreement is 20% footprint reduction by 25, 50% carbon footprint reduction by 2030, and then net zero by 2050. So this is how we signed for that agreement, and we communicated to our stakeholders, consumers, and general public. So total footprint is Nestle footprint, which we measured what we call base year in 2018, is 92 million tons. And most of it, like for any food manufacturing company, it's coming from the ingredients. So you can see for Nestle, it's 70%. And the second biggest contributor is coming from the packaging, and then equally in the manufacturing and transportation logistics side, so about 8%. So by the way, when I mentioned the scope 1, scope 2, scope 3, so I think probably you're already familiar with, but just to quick explanation. So scope 1, this is the terminology they use for the GHG emissions and the reporting. So every organization has to follow this protocol. So there are two types of terminologies. One is ISO scope, and the other one is SBT, science-based targets. So this is an organization consisting of CDP, carbon emissions they declare, and then WRI, World Resource Institute, and WWF, Worldwide Fund. So those three organizations come together, and then they guide and support different organizations how to measure carbon emissions, how to report, how to reduce, so all aspects of that. So scope 1, basically, in our facilities, so when we generate energy and heat, so we call it direct emissions or scope 1, but also includes our company-owned vehicles. So, and then the indirect, whatever we buy from other vendors, it could be electricity, it could be steam, it could be cold water, whatever those things. So that's indirect emissions. And the rest is what we call scope 3, indirect emissions. So most of it, scope 3 emissions always coming from the purchased goods. That's the raw material and ingredients. and then of course the transportation and the distribution side as well, and then whatever the fuel and energy related activities, the operational waste in our factories, in our facilities, and then end of life products, how consumers take care of the packaging side. Then of course employee commuting and business travel also contribute to this scope 3. So, and then the other ones are like purchase services. This could be consultancy services, or consumer, how they prepare their products, different methods of cooking, and some leased assets, what we have in Nestle. Sometimes, when we are growing some businesses like this vegetarian portfolio I just mentioned, that's a new business. So we have to invest in factories and other infrastructure. So we invest quite a bit. So that's capital investment and any other further investments from Nestle. So, but for the 92 million tons for carbon net zero, we take only in this green box. So that's SBTi scope. We don't take this red box. The reason is Nestle has very minimal control, how consumers cook, or for example, even if we have to invest capital, so there is no way we can, control that. So the green box is what we signed up for the carbon net zero, but you keep hearing carbon net zero and carbon neutrality, just two terms. Carbon net zero is, like anything, the abatement of carbon emissions, but you have to do everything, internal efficiencies and renewable energy sources and other means. You cannot do it by offsets. What that means is like, you can buy carbon credits. Whereas carbon neutrality, you can do with your internal efficiencies, but also you have that leverage of using the carbon credits or offsets. So that's the main difference. So a little bit more details on the carbon net zero roadmap, which we communicated to the public. So you can see some of the things, 100% of deforestation free, any of the raw materials we buy. We already achieved that last year, 100%. And then 100% of our packaging should be coming for either recyclable or reusable by 2025. Also, all our renewable electricity we purchase in any Nestle facility should be, it should be renewable 100% by 2025. And then again, we are planting like 20 million trees a year in all parts of the world. And we have to reach the target of 200 million by 2030, some of the intermediate deliverables. So how we approach reducing our greenhouse gas emissions or carbon footprint, we look at it holistically from farm to fork. So we divide into 3 buckets: the upstream, downstream, and in the middle, what we call Nestle operations. So as you can see, most of our footprint, of course, as I mentioned in that footprint, the ingredient side. So on most of the ingredient footprint coming from the agricultural practices. So here, some of the interventions or initiatives we focus on regenerative agriculture, better animal production, both for dairy and meat animals, and then of course, wherever possible, using low carbon ingredients. And in the operations side, mainly in our manufacturing and packaging side, the reducing the energy and water consumption, that's the main focus area, and using the renewable energy as much as possible. And definitely by 2025, that 100% electricity coming from the renewable sources. And packaging side, of course, like everyone else, reducing and recycling and using more sustainable packaging. And finally, in the downstream side, we also work with our customers, even on the consumer side, like companies like GE and Samsung, the storage side, how we store in the frozen storage or refrigerated storage efficient, and then reducing food waste. We work with all our stakeholders, and then of course, consumer side efficient cooking methods. For example, oven versus microwave. Oven has the highest footprint. Microwave is lesser, and even the new cooking methodologies like air frying, Instapot. So we try to offer our products, so consumers can use any of those cooking methods. And always, it's a collaborative approach, different functions in Nestle, with our suppliers, of course, universities and research institutes, industry organizations, and NGOs. So very holistic approach in our collaboration to reduce our footprint. So regenerative side, we play a very important role. So 4 pillars, we focus on biodiversity, soil, water, and dairy, and also meat. Actually, we didn't put it, but meat also very important part of that equation, regenerative agriculture. So 2 deliverables, 20% of our all key ingredients should be coming from the regenerative agricultural methods by 2025. And 50% of all our ingredients, key ingredients, coming from the regenerative agricultural practices by 2030. So that's the goal we have. On the biodiversity side, of course, the increasing the plant and animal biodiversity, both above and below ground. So as I said, the 200 million trees by 2030, they play an important role, especially important areas like cocoa farming and coffee plantation. So planting shade trees and fruit trees, that's where our focus is. When it comes to soil health, we work with our Farmer Connect program. We support almost 500,000 farmers. And also we work with our 150,000 suppliers. We have about 1,500 agricultural scientists working in different parts of the world. They support and guide our farming community, and quite a bit of supporting staff as well. And the regenerative agricultural practices, all the practices, geared towards increasing the soil organic matter and thereby protecting the soil health. On the water side, we have, a goal, 50% of reduction of water usage in all our factories. We are very close to achieving that goal. And wherever possible, protecting, restoring, and renewing the water sources, so that we play a critical role. And finally, on the dairy side, mixed farming of crops and livestock and different regenerative agricultural practices. And also we are working with the US Dairy Organization. So what we call, or everyone calls, Dairy NetZero initiative. So we are key supporter for this initiative. I don't want to go into details, but you just go on usdairy.com. You can go into details what this collaborative research is doing, from from feeding practices to manure management to energy utilization. So all very holistic view. So, and we contribute significantly with our expertise and also monetary resources to this effort. And then always, as I said, the ingredients are the critical part for our footprint. So you can see, on the left side, animal-based and marine-based ingredients, much higher in carbon intensity or emission factors. On the right side is, plant-based. So you can see, much lower ingredients in terms of carbon footprint. So our goal is as much as moving away from the left side into the right side in all our product categories. And that's what we have been doing for the past few years. So this is how we approach. We call it reduce, replace, rethink in terms of reducing the GHG footprint or the carbon impact. So reducing the impact of any current ingredient in recipe and also in process and packaging. So some of the examples are here, what we call that dairy net zero. So that's reducing the footprint. Of course, the improving the coffee varieties, so using the disease resistance varieties. So those kind of sourcing technologies we use. Replacing any high carbon intensity ingredients or the process or the packaging with lower impact alternate. So switching, for example, from plastic to paper, or the ingredients I mentioned going more from animal-based to plant-based. So that's replacing and rethinking again, completely moving into vegetarian, vegan, plant-based nutrition products, what we call. So this is how we see. And then some of the examples here on the reducing side, you can see here this is a very important product category and brand for us, KitKat, all over the world. So we're already sourcing sustainable ways in sourcing cocoa. So that's a very important initiative, and it has a huge impact on carbon reduction. This is a brand, Bayer brand in Asia, Philippines. So instead of 100% dairy milk, they're hybridizing with dairy and plant-based milks here. Here, I think it's soy milk. And then you can see Kit Kat packaging. Everything is plastic packaging is coming from recycled 100%. So, and then the replacing side here, some of the confectionery brands in Europe, we used to have that plastic wrappers or so those kind of packaging. Now it's a paper, it's calling out like I am paper here. So same thing, big brand Maggi all over the world, this flavor cubes or bouillon we call. So it used to be aluminum wrappers, but now everything is paper based in many countries in Europe, and they're going to roll out worldwide. Finally, on the Maggi recipe solutions, which is in the food category. So it's one of the key products in Europe, other parts of the world. So all the tomato, we use tons of tomato powder. And in Europe now, all the tomato powder is going to be sourced with the regenerative agricultural practices, the tomatoes grown. So on the rethink side, so two important brands for us, Sweet Earth in US and Garden Gourmet in Europe. So you can see many alternates to meat products we are offering, whether it's a burger or chicken, sausages, bacon, ham, those things, and even tuna alternate, what we call Wuna here. So all plant-based offerings here. And important category, dairy category, Wunda, so completely plant-based, pea protein-based milk in Europe, quite successful launch 2 years ago. And then Kit Kat, nobody would have imagined a few years ago, vegan, no dairy ingredients. So it's being offered in many markets or many countries. And finally, the beverages under Nescafé brand, like also oat-based, almond-based beverages. So these are already in marketplace and quite successful. So some of the tools we use in Nestle R&D, all what we call Olive 2.0 is basically an Excel-based system or the database. So this is mainly for the product developers. So we have all our ingredients, more than 6,000 ingredients. So they have the carbon emission factors or carbon intensity factors. So product developers can choose, product ingredient A versus ingredient B. They just type in and they can select the lowest carbon emission ingredient. Recipe management. So we use SAP system. Once you finalized your recipe, it automatically calculates the carbon footprint of that recipe, and it's very handy for the product developers. So, and then they can take the corrective action, if it is high, what are the other means to reduce the footprint. And also we have a system called Ecodex. It's a kind of a approximate life cycle analysis for our products. So again, a handy tool for the product developers, packaging engineers, or manufacturing engineers, looks at the footprint from farm to fork. So we can measure the life cycle analysis and do the life cycle analysis and measure the carbon footprint. So we can, compare product A versus product B. So, and then take the corrective action if there is to. And then finally here, so we also, as I said, it's a collaborative approach, probably close to your heart here. So we work with many universities, few examples here, University of Copenhagen, University of Alabama here, and St. Gallen in Switzerland. So I think the main aim here is, encourage and support the students community so that they take up more sustainability projects. Could be related to ingredients, packaging, processing, any area in the food industry. So, and we give financial assistance, and also we give coaching and guidance from Nestle experts. So I think that's the end of my presentation. So thank you very much. And any questions, I would be happy to answer. If I don't have the answers, I will find out from my colleagues and I come back to Sherry.
Thank you so much, Rao. Especially for such a large organization, there's really an opportunity to make a significant difference in how food is manufactured. So it's helpful to kind of understand how Nestle is approaching that. So for people in the audience, I see if there are a few questions in the Q&A, but if you have any, please go ahead and post those. Tiffany asks, sustainably sourced palm oil was a commitment that Nestle made in 2010, saying that it would be 100% responsibly sourced by 2020. It's now 2023. What can you say about Nestle's plan as of today?
Yeah, as I said in one of my slides, 2022, all our ingredients are sustainable, that deforestation free. So that we already achieved by last year.
Thank you.
Thanks for asking questions.
Steve asks, are Alo 2.0 and recipe management tools open source? Large companies may have similar tools, but if smaller companies could use them, it would certainly multiply the impact.
This is a Nestle tool, but I can inquire. Basically, what we did was we took the data from the databases. You can purchase them, and then we used them in our internal IT infrastructure to make them to an Excel database. But at the moment, it's not to be shared outside. But I can inquire, like if there are any other companies which are sharing these kind of databases, or Nestle has any intention, so definitely.
Thank you. Neo, I apologize if I said your name wrong, but I think I can answer this question. So Neo asks, are you going to share the slides and recordings with participants? Rao isn't able to share the slides with all of you, but certainly the recording will be available on the Farm to Fork website, and we welcome you reviewing that or sharing that with others. So thank you for asking. Malia asks, you didn't mention organic foods or farming or non-GMO. Does Nestle have a plan to address either of those?
In certain markets, I mean, we offer organic products. But I mean, if the consumer need is there in particular market or particular product category, we definitely looked into it. Some have been successful, but some not, unfortunately, because of the cost structure. So, we play on the scale always, being a big company. But if there is a need and if there is a business opportunity, we always looked into non-GMO. For example, in Europe, it's all non-GMO. In the US, we don't play in that. So. Same thing in organic in certain categories. We offer organic in certain categories. We don't.
Thank you. Jim asks, of all the countries where Nestle has operations, which have the most aggressive laws that impact sustainability goals?
Oh, definitely in as far as I know, in Europe, definitely many markets in Europe, much stricter, guidelines and rules. So that's where but we take it all over the world now, like maybe in markets like in Asia and Africa, they're not strict guidelines from the governments, but we follow, like more global guidelines even in those markets.
Thank you. Renee asks, does Nestle carry sugar-free and gluten-free products?
Gluten-free, yes. Even DiGiorno, we have a gluten-free pizza, quite successful. In many product categories, we offer gluten-free. When we had Buitoni pasta here, we had gluten-free pasta. I think Sweetearth, I believe there is a pizza product gluten-free, and CPK, California Pizza Kitchen, we have a gluten-free made with cauliflower. And yeah, in many categories we offer that. Sorry, other one, the gluten-free, and the other one, I forgot the first one you asked.
Sugar-free.
Sugar-free, yes, yeah. In confectionery, we try to offer, again, some successful and some not so successful.
Thank you. Anne asks, knowing that dairy and beef provide important nutrition worldwide, rather than moving away from ruminant, isn't there more opportunity to invest more to help the industry continue to advance practices? In the US, dairy contributes 1.8% of greenhouse gases. Certainly globally, there's opportunity to improve practices.
Absolutely. That's why we are working, with our farming community, both for dairy and beef cattle. We know that, it's critical part of the diet, meat or dairy. So we can, do the interventions at the farming and the feeding and the manure management levels. So, you reduce the footprint and then you offer the natural meats, our natural dairy ingredients. So I think that's where our focus is. But of course, wherever we can, if the consumer need is there, we also call it hybridization. maybe what we call this consumer segment flexitarians, offering 80% of the meat or dairy and substituting the rest of the 20% with plant-based ingredients, as long as the taste is there, the quality is there.
Thank you. Steve asks, how is Nestle working with municipalities to increase recyclability of its packaging? This seems to be one of our biggest challenges.
Yes, absolutely. I think there are some initiatives all over the world. In Europe, it's much more common. We're working with the municipalities and they're much more advanced. Even here, I mean, in certain parts of the US, when there are no waste streams, how can we encourage the municipalities? So that's what, I mean, some in Nestle are working with different municipalities. Again, the scale is not there, but that's initial baby steps. So we are progressing in that area as well.
Jim asks, can you compare the sustainability challenges of instant versus whole bean coffee?
Unfortunately, I'm not expert in that product category, but I will ask that question. Challenges in instant and the whole bean. Let me write it down. So I'll come back to you, Sherry, on that. So
thank you, Rao. And Jim, we can follow up with you afterwards. Another question is, how are suppliers qualified as vendors that meet Nestle sustainability requirements?
So, for example, in R&D or what we call development groups, we work very closely with our procurement community. So that's where the suppliers. So basically, like we have our sustainability goals. All the major suppliers, they have also, I mean, same kind of sustainability goals. So we are working in tandem so to reduce. For example, if we are working with a cheese supplier, we have 3 or 4 big cheese suppliers here in the US or in Europe. So we work, it's a very important ingredient for our carbon footprint reduction. So we work with the suppliers, say, what are they doing at farm level and further processing of the milk into cheese, correct? So, I mean, wherever we can work together, we work. And also sometimes we work independently, but bringing the same benefit to the consumer at the end. So but very collaborative with our suppliers.
What are some of the unique challenges for such a large company as Nestle to really kind of drive against sustainability goals?
I think the cost is the biggest, challenge here, correct? So we are offering plant-based. There is consumer need plant-based alternates like on our Sweet Earth brand and Garden Gourmet brand, but we know that the price point is much higher than the meat product. So fortunately, some consumers can afford that, but unfortunately, many consumers are struggling. Especially in this economic environment. So we try to be very cognizant of those issues. Definitely the cost side, and of course the technical challenges. Correct. For example, we would like to not use, natural gas, but natural gas is a very efficient energy source, and we all for example, our boiler systems are using the natural gas, switching everything in every facility, factory and other facilities from natural gas to electric boilers is a huge challenge, capital side. So those are the things. And of course, the sensory quality, sometimes we would like to use alternate ingredients, alternate these things, packaging, but it might change it might affect the shelf life in terms of packaging, and in terms of ingredients, it might change the sensory quality. So those are some of the challenges we face. But as a big company, always the communication inside the company is also challenging. So
thank you. Tiffany asks, is paper packaging being used in Europe because Europe has laws in place where there aren't laws in place in the US? If this is the case, and paper packaging is better for the environment, why not shift all packaging?
No, actually, we start somewhere, correct? And Europe, we start because that is where the immediate need, but we are also looking, the States, wherever possible. Even our pizza packaging, we're looking into renewable paper-based packaging side. And confectionery, we divested in the US, but if that business was there, they could have launched in confectionery paper-based packaging here. Same thing, Maggi, we don't have that brand and we don't have that product category. So that's in Europe and Asia. That's why they launched in those markets. But in US also, it's very important for us. I mean, going paper-based, more sustainable packaging.
You mentioned that Nestle is actively working with the dairy industry in a pre-competitive way on greenhouse gas reduction. Are there other examples that you can share where Nestle is working pre-competitively, whether that's crop related or packaging related, for example?
Dairy definitely in the US and also in Europe as well. We are working with this same dairy net zero initiative. And same thing like on the meat animal side, we are working with companies like Cargill, for example, like I think in Florida, working with the farmers, the ranchers there, how to, embrace the regenerative agricultural practices on the farm. So, and again, the plants and the animal coexistence on the farm. So those kind of initiatives, so we are following.
Thank you. One last question, and this is from Jim, who asks, does Nestle use any packages that are returned to Nestle to be cleaned and refilled as milk bottles or beer bottles are?
Yes, we tried that last year as a test and learn initiative in some of the beverage category in Europe. So the initial results are promising, but again, the logistics, the supply chain, is not very mature, correct? So, but we are trying that model and that concept we tried that in Europe and other parts of the world also. They will do what we call test and learn.
Thank you. Well, thank you so much, Rao, for joining us today. We really appreciate it. And thanks to our attendees for joining us as well today. We would love to hear from you. So you'll see in the chat a link to a brief survey. This series is only as good as it's relevant for you. So if you have feedback for us, we certainly would appreciate it. And we're doing these monthly. And so we would love to have you join us again. So next month, on April 17th, Mitch Doherty from Built Oregon will be joining us, who will be talking about the work that they do in the state to support entrepreneurs to start and grow their businesses, and also how really to improve the inclusiveness of the food industry in the state. So thank you so much for joining us, and I wish you a great weekend.